Hello, this is Gonzalo Lira, and this is the Roundtable number 30. And I'm joined with a couple of old hands here. It's History Legends. How's it going, Alex?
I'm good. You?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And of course, there's iEarlGrey, that is otherwise known as Mike. Mike, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
Awesome.
And
yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's a bit too warm, though.
So you got called up. You're going to go to the front when? Tomorrow or the next day? You know,
it all takes time. It's like at least 10 days from the date of applying for accreditation. Plus, there's some people like John Dugan, who's in Moscow.
Wait. What are you talking about? You're going to go to the front? I mean, are you serious?
No, well, go to Donbass. Where exactly, I actually don't know yet, because I'll be traveling with another group. So basically, they just need jelly bags behind the wheel of hopefully a bukhanka. I really want a bukhanka. That'd be amazing to drive that thing.
What is the bukhanka?
That's that loaf van, you know, that Soviet thing.
I don't know them. If you get a picture posted, I'll share it.
Yeah, it's the UAZ. It's like the classic version of a van. Yeah, it's got 4-wheel drive as well.
Oh, okay. I know that one. The one with the fat wheels that
everyone uses it.
Oh yeah, that is so cool. I want to get one.
I know.
Just to get one, man. I mean, drive around, go to the supermarket.
If I've never used it. Just so I've got an example. And they still make them brand new today. They're still terrible, but that is like part of the charm. Just like a Neva.
Yeah, can you bring up on
just
on
show a picture for the audience.
Yeah. They're so cool. By the way, chat, how's it going? Glad you're here. Reckless Abandon and Zariel are both moderating, so play nice. No spamming, okay? Be nice, chat. The other day there was a couple of guys. I mean, guys I've known for a while, but who were started spamming, and it's annoying. Come on. But you know, sorry, that's the only berating I'll be throwing chat's way. This is a comfy stream. We're gonna shoot the shit about what's going on. You know, no big revelations or anything like that. Although it has been scientifically proven that lettuce lasts longer than Liz Truss as prime minister.
It does. I shared the breaking news today about that.
Yeah. Crazy.
Awesome.
Oh, by the way, here's the Oh no, that's not what I was thinking about.
I mean, neither. That's not what I was thinking. Okay.
That's not what I had in mind.
Alex, look it up, and I'll post yours too. Oh, but that looks Soviet.
I thought it was just the regular truck, but that's okay. Yeah, I see it. Okay, yeah.
You got it.
No, but anyway, what you call it? So Liz Truss is no longer prime minister, and nobody knows who's going to be the prime minister. And people are saying in 4chan on poll, they're saying that this could be the third Carolingian age, because after all, King Charles I and King Charles II dissolved parliament and assumed absolute power. Maybe King Charles III will follow in his predecessor's footsteps. Because I mean,
apparently even he's depressed, and they're preparing his son to take over. Yeah, didn't you see it?
No. What's that all about? I didn't hear.
Okay, I don't have all the info.
Go ahead.
Nice hat, by the way, Mike. Nice switch.
Switcheroo.
Yeah, we're gonna have like a fashion show from Mike. Okay.
Cool. Every 10 minutes, you switch hats. But apparently the king's not feeling well. Too much responsibility, too much pressure, and they're preparing his son to take over already. They said, "Be ready any moment."
Well, the rumor is that King Charles now has had heart problems for years.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's been worse.
Really? Oh man. So it's like we're flipping through prime ministers and kings. What the hell?
Yeah.
UK, what the fuck is going on over there?
So maybe the son is gonna take over full power for some time.
The question is which son though, because if it's William, but then if it's Harry, it's like it's party time.
It's William. It's William. Like Harry, it doesn't work like that. I think the brothers and sisters don't have a claim to the throne ever.
Harry's literally the ginger kid of the family.
Yeah. No, and even I understand it. Even if I could be wrong about this, but I think that if William were to die beforehand, of course, we're not wishing this. I'm just saying hypothetically, if William were to die before King Charles, it would pass to William's son,
Exactly.
not to Harry. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Harry's
yeah.
out of the picture. Thank God, because that guy is a fucking idiot as far as
No,
I'm
but I
concerned.
think he's like that because he has never had a claim to the throne. Like, he knows he's never going to be there, so it's just party time all the time.
No, but he's a moron, and he picks the worst goddamn women. Did you see the women he used to be dating before? They were hot. They were like sensible, nice girls. And he picks like a fucking actress, man. What the hell? But anyway, that kind of bullshit aside, Mike, I mean, you're a Brit, so who do you think is going to be the next prime minister? They're saying that Jeremy Hunt, by the way, is definitely not going to throw his hat into the ring.
Yeah, you pronounce the H as a K in Jeremy's name. That's honestly.
Okay, I just.
Yeah. So that tells you how he's held in regard. There is talk that Boris is seriously wanting to come back.
Oh, come on, man! You know, it's like when you break up, you date some other girl and come back to the old girl. It's never the same. It's shitty. It's always shitty.
The problem is
love affairs never work. What?
The problem is, like, the talk is, like, even if this conservative government, if let's say they actually hold full-blown elections, Keir Starmer, as the guys in the Duran have spoken about at length and accurately, I think, you know, he's got the charisma of wet concrete. I think Alexander.
Yeah. That was a turn of phrase. That was a good turn of phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fitting. And he is so up the deep state's backside, it's unreal, being Crown prosecution. And he's had some dodgy stuff go on when he was head of Crown prosecution, as you can probably imagine. So he's no better. So the UK is down the drain. Either way you look at it.
Oh yeah, and the BBC is saying that it leaked rather that the BBC has already prepared scripts for the rolling blackouts that are going to take place in the UK. The UK is fucked.
I've said this.
And by the way, guys, remember, this is demonetized. So you can say whatever the fuck you want, except you can't talk about the malady and you can't talk about the medicine. Those are the only two topics that are off limits because I already got a strike because of that. So anything else, you know, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I love that that's worse than the worst swear word we could even cook up.
Yeah. You know, amazing. You know, we can talk about Jeremy's alternate name, no problem. But you know, you mention anything like if you mention anything important or true, you get censored. If you talk about the flat Earth or crap like that, no problem. You know, if I were to start talking about the flat Earth right now, you know, I'd be getting like $50 per CPM. You know, I'd be like making money off the wazoo.
What if I wear this hat?
Oh man, you really are doing a fashion show. Oh my God. Okay, General Surovikin, how is the offensive going?
That guy is a meat muscle.
Oh, he's a bulldog. Like,
yeah.
Dude, Alex, did you see his press conference?
I read through it. Yeah.
You should see it. You should see it because the guy came across real impressive. I'll tell you that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The butcher of Syria.
Yeah. No, he came across very, very serious. And as I understand it, and Mike, I want your input on this because as chat, you guys might know, Mike is actually in St. Petersburg. Mike is an actual Russian agent. Mike, are you getting your checks? Because I haven't. You know. But anyway,
they're a bit slow. But,
but
at least they're paid in rubles.
That thing of Russian agent, it's so overdone. Like every time there's somebody they disagree with, they have to think he's paid by whatever side. And I'm like, okay, you guys are so convinced that there's only one way to think, that everyone else has to be bribed. I'm like, come on.
They literally said that about Musk.
Yeah,
about anyone
guy in the world. The richest guy in the world, he has to get paid off.
In rubles.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense. But this goes to show how these people think. It's not rational. So there's no point arguing. It's not rational.
No, that's it. Yeah, Mark Twain, very right. Don't argue with them. Drag them down. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Yeah.
No, and the worst part is that, you know, like on YouTube, I mean, the three of us as YouTubers, we're all perfectly aware of the fact that a lot of pro Zelensky regime channels get huge numbers. the algorithm is totally biased in their favor. And us who talk about reality, we get shellacked. Man, it's fucking awful. But that's the way things are, total information control.
I don't know if Alex can chime in, because Gonzalo, you've already mentioned this about how the taps got turned off on your channel. So I'm going to see if I can bring up my statistics. 90 days perhaps isn't too representative. I'd have to spend some time to get to zone in, but I think it was around March time. I had this massive uptick. So I was only on like 12,000 because I had a stupid gaming channel. It was no one give a shit, which is fine. And of course, I posted this sort of content, a couple of Putin's speeches as well, which are wildly popular because they create, banned RT. So I had this massive uptick, and I went to something like 50,000 within a month. And then it went, and it was only after I was featured on the Duran that YouTube was kind of forced, like, oh, I have some subscribers.
Yeah, Alex, same thing happened to you?
Well, me, it's rather when I was gone in September. I didn't post, so I don't think it was shadow ban or something. It's just because when I left, like the offensive started, and then people just went to other channels to watch what was up, right? So now I'm slowly building it back up, but I see that some channels have grown exponentially, and let's be honest, I don't think it's 100% legit. Like there might be some artificial stuff, but that's my theory, right?
Here's
I can't prove
metric.
it.
Yeah,
I can't prove it. I can't. It's just a feeling that there might be some stuff happening, and that the people are not even aware of it. Is that there's a battle for your attention. That's how I would call it. There's right now a battle for your attention, and people see how important it is to keep this going. Well, not keep the war going, but to keep the battle for attention. So,
hey, Alex, it's happening to me and it's happening to chat. There's something up with your internet. Why don't you refresh your page and hop back on? Because I think that your connection is like really bad. You got all chopped up. Because Mike, are you hearing the same insofar as
I got the same.
Is it better now or?
Maybe.
Just refresh it. It'll be easier. Yeah.
On that regard, like you can see, and you'll probably have observed this as well, but there are a lot of videos from these pro blue and yellows. They have like massive numbers of views on their videos, and sometimes in the millions, and yet they've got a ridiculously low level of subscribers. So the people are coming to get their quick fix of copium and then leaving. They're not sticking around. Whereas
I think
your channel,
I think they're bots.
Quite probably to help the algorithm, maybe. I don't want to fling those accusations though, because I get those accusations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, like, how many subscribers are you at now, and how many views do you typically get?
95,000 right now. Let me.
Oh, you're closing in on the silver plaque. Good on you, man.
I don't know if Susan's going to put her name to it though, Gonzalo. I think that's where I get. Yeah, kind of. So I average about 2 million views a month.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's now up to about 2 and 2.5, but that's because of recent events.
I think from the moon. Sorry, I'm in a bunker. So I'm kidding. Is it better now?
No,
a little bit.
Keep on talking. Let's see what happens. Maybe it straightens out by itself. Yeah. No, but like, so yeah, you're getting like 100,000 subscribers or close to it, and about 2 million views. Yeah, that's actually good numbers. 2 million views. I mean, are you posting every day?
Yeah, every day, and it's probably like 2 to 3 videos. Probably about 100,000 views a day, roughly. So I'd say a video gets around 30,000 views.
Yeah,
on average, roughly.
Yeah, because you do those longer streams and then you chop them up, right?
Yeah, and YouTube demonetizes those streams within the first 5 minutes without fail.
Really? And the short clips, do they demonetize that?
They're fine.
That's weird.
They're the same. It's the same content, and they're usually fine. Recently, they're demonetized because I made the mistake of posting that clip of that young girl in Kiev next to that explosion, and I had a subtitle: "Kiev resident finds out what it's like to be in Donetsk." They didn't like that short that I
No, they didn't
posted,
like
so
that.
they smacked me with this ban that then makes sure that they first of all do the automatic scan, and then I have to get a manual review every time. So basically, you're demonetized for the time being. In fairness, they're quite good with me.
And by the way, I'm getting real dark because like I'm in the terrace of my apartment smoking cigarettes because I hate smoking indoors, and so you guys are just gonna have to see the Prince of Darkness shit while I'm smoking at any rate. Alex, chat was saying that you were making a really good point until you had that snafu with your internet. What were you talking about?
Yeah. So what I think is going on is that also depending on the titles you put on the video, but like Mike said, depending on the title you put in the video might be demonetized. Whatever you say in the video, depending on the words you use, it might be demonetized. So anytime you bring, let's say, bad news for the Ukrainian side, demonetized, right off the bat before you post. So it's the AI. So it's not somebody there. It's just the AI. Depending on the structure of words, it's bad news. They'll be like, you can't monetize this.
Hey, Alex, I hate to interrupt. It might be smarter if you turned off your camera because I think the video is eating up your bandwidth, and because you're all choppy.
People say in the chat that it's perhaps you, but okay.
Yeah, it's all real choppy. So in the StreamYards thing, just stop your cam, and I think that'll straighten out the problem.
Yeah, you can also go into settings and just downgrade the quality, so maybe it doesn't use bandwidth. Like mine's set as 720.
No, I think that insofar as this system is concerned, it's the video. This has happened to me before, so it could be that. Alex, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Okay, maybe we'll try after. Maybe there was some friction with my internet connection, but I'll try at the moment.
It's sounding a lot better, actually. So anyway, don't worry. These are like the normal snafus of any show.
Yeah. We'll try things up, but I think that depending on the title you put, your video gets demonetized if you bring bad news. But if you bring bad news for Russia, then of course it's going to be monetized. So there's this thing that I noticed. I'm like, okay, there's some bias in it, and also like the views. Yeah.
But you're making a really good point about attention, because it's not just YouTube where attention is now a currency. I think that's society in general, especially with social media.
Yeah. You have to be hitting people with what they want to hear. And the thing is, what's depressing, quite frankly, is that there are relatively few people who want to hear what's actually happening and go beyond the mainstream media bullshit. And so, people just want, confirmation bias. They want more stuff that says more or less what they're thinking already. They don't want to be surprised. And so, yeah, it's depressing, especially because I recognize that if we were playing on a level playing field, all of us would have monster views. They'd be much bigger than they are today. It's just how can I put it? They have this notion that they can eliminate bad news by just silencing it, and it drives me up the wall. And some really big.
It's becoming more and more apparent though to everyday person, which I find. And then the other thing I've reported on my streams very recently, in like the past week, is the manner of reporting. So as I like to do, and again, I wouldn't be enjoying this exposure if it wasn't for the deletion and cancel of RT and Russian media, because then I'm giving this portal. And then Russian media, as I've shown time and again, it will say the fact Ukrainians penetrate Russian defense in Kherson, let's say. So many losses, whatever, this took place at this time, reports the head of the region, blah, 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 situation under control. Then it gives you the usual context of the special operation started XYZ. And that's it. That's the end of the article. You move over to the Mirror, the Guardian, it's got a spin to it. It's got a conclusion. So Russia is losing because the Ukrainians penetrated the defense. It's all over. And, hey, woohoo, drones, whatever. And there's all this spin and so much emotionally charged stuff, or just pure rubbish. Whereas the Russians are quite boring by comparison. If
But
I share that on my
actually,
social media, I won't get the likes.
but I think
Does it
that
sound better now? Sorry, does it sound better now? I turned off my mic. It's like just my regular headphone. Is it like?
It's quite choppy again.
it's
Oh
quite
my
choppy.
god!
Yeah,
I hear you guys properly.
no, yeah, because I hear Mike perfect, and
I hear you choppy, but
you hear me choppy.
yeah.
Now and then.
Oh, now and then. Okay.
Yeah, but
Well,
you're okay.
And it's
Gonzalo.
blurry. But okay, no. Okay, is it better now?
It sounds like it. Why don't you count to 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
That was more stable.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more stable.
It's very weird. Anyway.
Well, don't worry about it. I mean, nobody's here to see how
Stop the
pretty
torrents,
we are,
man. It's just you can't be having torrents going
stop
on.
the
whilst
torrents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in Russia, you can torrent whatever you want now, and nobody hassles you.
I'm not sure if they legalized that piracy thing. They were going to lift some of the piracy laws, particularly affecting Western copyrights.
Yeah.
It's good.
I think de facto they did. They removed the copyright stuff.
They removed the obligation to pay royalties to any unfriendly or companies in unfriendly countries.
Right.
So that also, kind of gave you the freedom.
Yeah, I mean that must be hell on publishers because I mean that's where I started. I started in publishing and film, but Russia is a fairly decent sized market, and so a lot of authors get royalties from the books that they publish in Russia. And in the past I started in publishing in '96, and I can tell you that it was no problem. It was just you have a Russian edition, good on you, and you're going to get a few $1,000s every year from Russia, and what you call it? I'm guessing now that all those authors, Western authors with Western publishers.
You're chopping up.
Yeah, Gonzalo, you're breaking up now. I'm losing you, man. Don't care.
Okay, he's gone.
We lost Gonzalo. Well, on this point though, the gaming industry has just taken an absolute.
It's just you now.
It's just me. Hey guys, switch to the main camera. I'll take it away from here. But yeah, point being, like with royalties and stuff, gaming industry's taking a battering. That's pretty much why I've said today I'm going to resign from my job, because I'm pretty much accepting free money, which is like the time that I use on the videos. I would ordinarily be busy with calls with clients or prospective clients and trying to convince them to hand over the money. But then I'm on the two-prong issue of politics, whereby if they might not agree, I get the "we don't deal with the aggressor country" emails. Then if they're cool with that, particularly the US, they're either afraid of their government sanctioning them or falling afoul, or they just simply can't pay because of Swift and all this stuff. So I don't know why they haven't fired me yet, or at least asked me to resign. They sometimes don't even speak to me like all day. It's always like they forget they've got an Englishman on the payroll who's kind of not doing anything. Well, I am. It's just I'm not able to line their pockets. So that's my situation. Actually, you're
okay. So everyone, Gonzalo's gonna come back in a moment. Like the connection was a bit choppy, and but now it's fine, right? Like, I hear you properly. Yeah, but Gonzalo's gonna be back. So as we were saying, this battle for attention.
Okay. I know that you're gonna arrest me. But let me finish the stream, okay? Because we're going to be talking about you guys. Okay? Yeah, just sit there on the couch. It's okay. But don't put the weapons on the couch. The grease from the weapons, spoils the furniture. For crying out loud. Can't you guys do anything right?
Civilized. Just not civilized.
No. But anyway, sorry about that. My internet
has gone again. Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
They couldn't even wait to the end of the stream, eh?
Yeah. They know we're gonna talk about stuff, so they're like, cut it.
Actually, maybe my hat's causing the interference. Let me just try that for a minute. We'll just put that out of the way.
Oh my God. Yeah. But this battle for attention on YouTube, but I think you can make videos, so it's good. We can make videos, but for sure, you got to be surfing around stuff. You can't be blunt about the titles because it's just not going to go through.
I did an experiment where I had Zelensky in my thumbnail, and that video did amazing. It was like, poof. So I could just, as long as I have blue and yellow and maybe Zelensky in there, and then a sympathetic title, but the content is completely opposite. It's like if I spin it, then it'll be fine. It's weird like that. But then Russia, in their news, they were talking about banning YouTube, and very, very astutely, their own legislators, ministers acknowledge the fact that if they did go ahead and ban YouTube, all it would do is promote people to circumvent the restrictions. So they'll go to like VPNs or they'll use other measures, which they are trying to crack down on. But I thought that was quite astute of them, that they'll just motivate people more.
Yeah.
I don't use social media because I can't be bothered to log into the VPN to go in. I never really went on there anyway.
But this guy I follow that I mentioned to you before, he said that the problem is they made VPNs illegal in Russia too, right? So the problem is if people want to go around these things, they have to use an illegal VPN to use an illegal software, and this is how you get on the hit list, not the hit list, but on the list of the FSB immediately. You're using forbidden material twice, and they're like, okay, why is he so inclined to use these services?
The other issue is a rule's not a rule unless it's enforced. So when you think about all these extra infractions, then you've got to enforce them for it to be a rule, and then you've inundated your mechanisms in order to do that. So then it nullifies pretty much the whole exercise. That's kind of what they were saying.
Yeah.
Very smart, very smart. If only the EU would pay attention. So, we're going to put a price cap on oil or whatever, or ban it. So then people buy it through third-party countries like China and all this, and even was it Turkey now for gas?
Oh, yeah, but
with the gas hub.
So tell us, Mike, about the mobilization.
Yeah. So I was telling you guys before the stream because Gonzalo in particular thought that I'd volunteered. So I haven't actually volunteered. I'm not going to the front as he joked. It came about from a conversation, well, a long-running conversation actually, since all this started. Maybe my wife was telling me about an employee at a factory who'd received his summons to go to the military office. And as I was saying to her, well, why are people panicking? You just put your details in the system. And she confirmed that at least, or around 50% of them got turned away anyway after reporting in willingly. Because there was a period where it could be voluntarily. And then if that period expired, they'd come knocking on your door to go drag you there. Literally just to update the system. It wasn't an automatic summons. And I was calling all these guys cowards. I was, cowards. And then eventually, when it was a family friend, I was like, oh, he's got no excuse. I said, that's ridiculous. And she said, right, well, you're calling everyone cowards, but you're able to because you're never going to get a summons. I said, fine, I'll mobilize myself then. And she's like, okay, so I will. But there you go.
Do you know many people around you that were willing to join, that went to the office?
Yeah. Well, directly. See, most of the people obviously I talk to are expats, so they're all kind of safe. One of them ran away, and I called him a coward. But he had dual American and Russian citizenship with kids in America as well. So I kind of understood him there a little bit in the sense like, well, I need to send money back to them, and they also depend on me. So I kind of gave him a little bit of a pass, but I still told him, I was like, if you love Russia, then you'll just do that one thing that's been asked of you. That's kind of where I'm headed. Is not, again, as I joked, it's close enough to the flames to be like everyone's like, oh, you're so brave, but not close enough to actually get burned and be in trouble. Yes, there's a bit of a ploy on my part.
Yeah, for sure.
Gonzalo,
what's happening?
I had to reset my router. I think it was.
Well, you're much better, much clearer image and
Yeah. I'm the
Okay.
only one missing. GG.
But then, Alex, you're more stable as well. Your audio's not chopping.
Okay, so maybe
I don't want
you
to
know,
encourage you. Don't do anything rash now. 4K.
Yeah. Okay, but I think it depends from the live stream. It depends sometimes of Gonzalo's connection. Like sometimes if we have too many screens at the same time or something, it overloads it. But
I don't know.
now you have a good voice and clear image. So
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, sorry guys, chat. Sorry, it can't be helped. It's obviously not on purpose. And if I had any real control over it, I'd make it, so that you could all see my beauty and my sexiness. Yes. You think that this double chin happened by accident? No, it took a lot of work.
a lot of investment. A lot of investment.
A lot
You're
of
not gonna waste it. You're not gonna waste it.
A lot of McDonald's. Yeah, exactly, man. But anyway, what were you guys talking about while I was gone?
I was talking about my ploy of manipulating my wife into letting me go to Donbass, and then how actually it was all just a ruse because I can get all the street cred for going there, but not actually be on the front line and not actually risk my life or anything like that. So it's very British. You know Blackadder with General Melchett, where he's like, "Don't worry, Baldrick, we'll be right behind you." And then Blackadder says, 30 miles behind you. Yeah, that's me.
But I have a question, Mike. If somehow they need troops and they say, okay, truck drivers, we need you on the front, would you go?
Yeah. In the whatever role, like I said, my main issue was people were being asked just to go down to update their details, and they were running away from that, and 50% were anyway being sent home. And like you said, Alex, anecdotally, one of your contacts said maybe even 1 million people actually went. So only 300,000 have been accepted. From what I'm told, like let's go full dark scenario now. So things go Pete Tong in Ukraine. So something horrendous happens that requires full mobilization. The way it would work is obviously they go through all the citizens first. And as I keep repeating on my stream, can you imagine the diplomatic nightmare, even accepting foreign volunteers? So as a British citizen, I don't have Russian passport or citizenship. And then something happens to me, repatriation of whatever's left of me, and then any fallout. You saw the difficulties they had with Aslin as well. Can you imagine the headache? So I can understand that the Russian government wouldn't want to willingly enter into those problems on top of the ones they've got. But let's say backs against the wall and they say, right, residents of the country, you're required. Yeah, I'd step up. But as my wife was poking me, that's either unlikely, not going to happen, or way down the line. So all that, I didn't want to sit here at home all that time going, you cowards. And then I get my ticket and I go, well, England calls, I'm afraid.
Well, also, they've got the fact that they've got 70,000 people who just voluntarily showed up and they hadn't been called. So I don't think that they're lacking in manpower in any kind of way. And insofar as the current situation on the ground is concerned, I mean, what have you guys been hearing today insofar as the Kherson offensive? Because the last I heard that there seemed to be like reconnaissance in force on the Ukrainian side, and they were getting hammered. Is that more or less where we stand insofar as the Kherson offensive goes?
I'll pass to Alex.
Yeah. For now, this is the situation. Like since the last gains in Kherson, the Ukraine offensive has not gained an inch or very little, very little. So it seems that the withdrawal worked in a way that it stabilized the front line. Now, the thing is, when you're defending such a front line, it's all about the concentration of forces in the sector. So I'll explain how Ukrainian attacks were so successful. Essentially, the Russian front was too big. And what happened in late July, in late August, actually, is that a lot of the Russian soldiers that entered Ukraine, they actually signed a 6-month deployment. So what happened is that they entered February. February plus 6 months is August. But what happened is that already in July, a lot of these men didn't want to go attack enemy positions anymore. So that's why the Lysychansk offensive kind of stalled, because a lot of Russian soldiers were like, nah, I'm not dying 1 month prior to the end of my deployment. And then 30 to 50,000 men left. the front line in late August. And this is when the Ukrainians attacked, because the front line was porous. A lot of the troops, the Ukrainians had massed a lot of forces, but it's not a miracle. It's just that the Russian front line was like a cheese. You know, there were a lot of holes. The Ukrainians got the troops and they managed to infiltrate through the gaps. So they have these units called Deep Reconnaissance Groups, DRGs, and it's like bands of hundreds of men, and they just infiltrate enemy positions. And they can go as far as 30 kilometers back to create havoc. And this is how you see so many Ukrainian flags during the offensive all over the place. It's part of a very smart, actually, use of informational warfare. So that means that they'll post on Telegram places with Ukrainian flags everywhere just to make the enemy panic. And
is it working?
It worked in Kharkiv, because what happens is that the soldiers, they don't need to control the village. They just plant a flag just to scare the shit out of everyone. But a lot of people, then they're like, okay, pull back. The enemy has this village, when it's only maybe 10 guys. Now, the thing is that the Russians, they're like, okay, let's just withdraw, reform the lines, and tighten it up.
Right.
And since they've been doing that, it's been a bit more complicated.
I'm still here, by the way.
Yeah. It's been a bit more complicated to infiltrate these lines, because there's more men per square meter or per kilometer. And now it's just going to get harder, just like I said in a lot of my videos, because with 300,000 Russians on their way, and people in the media, they don't understand. It's 300,000 Russians, okay, but it's also all the volunteers and a lot more people than we think. Like the Russian army, I think.
I actually think that they've been throwing around the number 300,000, but I suspect that it's actually a lot more. I get that vibe, because a lot of people that I know, casual acquaintances, they've mentioned the fact that a lot of people have been called up. Some of them themselves have been called up. I get that vibe that it's not 300,000, it's more. What do you guys think of that?
The thing, what I think, and from what I've heard, is that allegedly there was this talk that Russia wanted to remove conscription, like in the coming years before the war. Like that was the plan, to remove conscription, apparently. So the people in the recruitment offices didn't really take care of keeping books of everybody that would come. That's why there was a bit of chaos at the beginning of the mobilization. They didn't have the papers, but then the partial mobilization forced everyone to show up to the office, and then they have a new database of everyone. So it kind of, and this one I think is digital compared to the older ones that were paper and nobody cared about.
Right.
So a lot of people showed up. I think only 300,000 people got in, because that's all they can train and equip at the moment. Because what's the point of having 1 million men? They're just sitting around, they're going to complain, and it's not. We saw that 300,000 is already hard to take care of.
Yeah.
And but from what I've heard, Russia has the infrastructure to train all these people and equip. It's just that it's a bit messy, because they don't have necessarily the best bookkeeping. So they have stuff, but they don't know where. Like they know they have guns and tanks, but I'm sure the Russians don't even know how many tanks they have in storage, actually. They're like, maybe 13,000, could be 30. I don't know. Yeah. So they don't know themselves, I think, all the equipment they have because of bad bookkeeping. But the equipment seems to be there.
Well, it seems natural that, if you have an inactive army for a long time, and all of a sudden you shake it up with something like this, it's going to be inevitable that a lot of a lot of dust is going to get kicked up, just by virtue of the fact that they're gearing it all up again. So yeah, I mean, all this stuff that comes out of the West that's saying that they can't do the mobilization and all the rest of it, it seems to me like coping, quite frankly. By the way, Mike, Brian Berletic over at New Atlas, right? He mentioned you because Brian was in the Marines and he did combat training, and he was of the opinion that it would take him like a week to remember all the stuff that he learned back in the day. And he mentioned that you had said something similar, I believe.
Yeah, so I was just plain old grunt. I went straight out of school and I played it safe instead of going to something technical or military intelligence as I was offered. I was like, no, put in infantry is my first choice, and I guarantee I'll get in. But yeah, we're talking like 20 years ago, because I was 17 back then. I'm now 37, pushing 40. So yeah, that was a long time ago. It would take a while to knock the rust off me as well. The other thing Brian said was, in his estimation, it would take 2 weeks for Russia to bring these guys up to speed. Yet we heard Shoigu say a month. And
Wow.
this is where I have to agree, where you're kind of saying he says 300, it's probably 500. Again, we're going to have to do that with these figures. Why would you be completely frank and just hand that information to your enemy on a plate? Because you know they're going to use it against you. Of
Exactly.
course. So I agree with Brian's assessment. And then I was unsurprised to see Shoigu double it, because, of course, then it probably is only a week, you know? And we've already seen like a first patch.
Yeah, and also ultimately, I think that these guys who are getting called up, they're not going to be sent to the front. I think that they're going to be sent to other units throughout Russia. Russia is a big country with a big military, and they're going to rotate out troops that are on top of shit and move those troops to the front. I mean, I don't think that any guy who's been conscripted, who's not conscripted, who's been called up right now, I don't think any of those guys are going to see the front. I mean,
some of them. I think the point is for them to reach the front. I mean, let's be honest. No, but I think, because let's be honest, the Ukrainians did the conscription thing, and they brought a lot of guys, untrained guys, to the front. And when I say untrained, it's guys that maybe they have had training back in a long time ago, but they're not like top notch. Okay. But what I mean is that in a lot of cases, you can train them for a week or two. You can send them to the front, to a calm sector, let's say, like not necessarily to the front, but you send them there and they're going to learn on the spot. But for the Russians, the goal now is to put boots on the ground, to fill the gaps. They need those men, even if they don't know how to do shit. If you hold an AK and you cover this 10 meters, it's enough. They don't want anyone crossing like behind their lines. So they prefer to have an untrained guy with an AK that can shoot if he sees something than a gap.
Yeah,
sure, but you can put that guy, like with Gonzalo's point. I forget my source. It was a little while back now, but one of the concerning things was that these mobilized troops, by freeing up other standing professional units, they can rotate with Syria, where there's guys who have fresh, relevant experience of similar situations. And some of the airborne forces that are being released from Syria, these guys, they're like the Spartans. That's what they live for. That's what they do. It's what they thrive on. So then they'll be released to then freed up. And of course, the West will say that they're sending in like ISIS or something. I lose track of who's
Michael is right, because when you look at the Russian army, the only part of the Russian army that only accepted volunteers is the Russian airborne units. So these guys are volunteers. They're not conscripts per se. So these guys are professionals. So when you put them somewhere, you know you got the real deal. And these are the guys that are in Kherson. And you see it. You see it, how they fight. They're elite. You can consider them elite. And they stand their ground.
The Wagner group, you know, that you saw that video of the head of the Wagner group going to some Russian prison and basically saying, you know, join us, and there's going to be only two ways out, you know, retirement or die, and you'll get 2 grenades, you know, one to throw to the enemy and one to blow yourself up, and you'll have like a heroic life. And you know, basically, I was thinking to myself, you know, the Wagner group, if this is more or less accurate, they are, to borrow a term from pop culture from the Dune books, they are the Russian Sardaukar. You know, you know, if you chat, you guys probably know, they were like a prison planet, and they had created an army out of the prisoners who were razors, who were just like the most motivated, badass motherfuckers imaginable. That seems to be what the Wagner group is, man. And I'd be scared. I'd be like, I don't want to deal
not
with those
all
guys.
of Wagner. So they had this push, which I was surprised at. And I got two sides to this one. So first of all, that's quite an age-old thing. I remember my biological dad. he was given the choice of the army or prison, and he chose the army and then deserted, and they picked him up at Calais trying to hop a ferry over to France. So then they sent him to a farm in Yorkshire for a while. He was a cheeky bugger. So there's this trade-off that you've got. So what, I can't remember, was it 6 months or a year's contract? I think it was a year's contract with Wagner. So it didn't matter how long your term was. You had to serve a year in Wagner, and then all was forgiven. But of course, they had these caveats. You try any funky business with the locals, you try and pilfer any of these washing machines for these chips to make our Su-27s, then we're going to do you. Boom, double tap to the back of the head. So they're very clear on the conditions. And unofficially, in one of the Russian channels, maybe Archangel's Spetsnaz or whatever it was, it claims that one of the volunteers was one of these like oligarch guys, mafia / oligarch, shady little bastard. He said, yeah. And then he tried to go to Ukraine. They caught him. He's gone. Double tapped.
What do you mean? He tried to go to Ukraine, like? Defend?
Oh yeah, he signed up. He thought it was a free ticket to go meet his mates in Kiev. So he thought, I'll get bussed over to the front line, and then I'll just sneak out maybe, and I'll go meet my buddies and my mafia friends, and I'll be home dry, and I'll have escaped Russia. No, he got caught, double tapped. Allegedly, I have no source to actually corroborate this, but the claim is that Wagner is enforcing those exact rules, and they're not messing about, and I wouldn't expect them to either.
To go back a little bit to something that we were discussing when my internet conked out, that I'm really interested in. How do you guys see the Kherson offensive shaping up at this time?
Yeah, Alex chimed on that. My perspective at the minute, as Surovikin politely said, it's tense there, and that's code talk for me. That military talk where, yeah, I'm sure it is tense, but he's acknowledging that it is the focus. Today, I've seen another rumor that Zelensky's stated aims or his directions given by the puppet masters is you must at least either take Kherson or make significant progress by the 8th of November, and ideally seize the nuclear power plant. And the reason I kind of give that half credence is Grossi's visit to Russia, which was not reported as far as I'm aware in the West, where he spoke to Putin and was very impressed with Putin's technical knowledge of everything, pretty much, the nuclear power
plant. Give us, who's Grossi for background?
Grossi is the head of the IAEA organization, the watchdog that was tasked with overseeing it. Now, lots of pomp and fanfare was made when he visited Zelensky, and even I criticized him. I was like, why are you only visiting Zelensky and not Putin? Well, to be fair to him, he's subsequently gone and spoken to Putin about trying to get this backdoor way of Ukraine sneaking back the power plant, and it's not going to fly. The Russians aren't entertaining it. There's no way in hell. But reportedly, that is the push. So I think Surovikin is acknowledging this wave that's going to come at some point, presumably. Then I also think, to his credit, he is getting in the plans to step back as needed to certain positions, presumably on the Dnieper River. So I think he will give up half of Kherson on the other bank, with the knowledge that when these troops are formed up and ready, getting rid of this civilians, smart move in my opinion. These certificates that guarantee them equal land and property in Russia, smart move. I don't think it's a one-way thing or whatever. I think you can come back later on when
it's probably case by case. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So there's some complications there, but never mind that. So basically, he gets a free city to maneuver, use whatever apartment as whatever sniper nest as he likes. There's no criminality or fallback. So that kind of weaponizes the city with the absence of the civilians. I think that's smart.
Yeah.
Politically, yes, it will be difficult politically for the Russians to see that. Kharkiv was difficult for the Russian people to see, but Surovikin's proved himself already to the Russian people that he's to be trusted. Trust the plan, trust the general, and I believe, it will. So the West they'll sing, they'll dance, they'll get the extra funding, and then give it maximum probably 2 weeks after that event, probably. And the bear will smash those claws straight in, and woe betide anyone in Nikolaev, I reckon, all the way from Kherson to Nikolaev, anyone standing in the way of the Russians then, they're just going to be obliterated. There's even talk of Russell Bentley's been quite open about a dirty bomb being planted in Nikolaev by the West.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of that. Yeah, because to go back a little bit to what Surovikin said, he said in his press conference that a lot of very difficult decisions would have to be made, words to that effect. And the West interpreted it as like, oh, they're going to go nuclear, which I thought was stupid. It meant, obviously, as far as I would understand it, that they might have to give up territory and potentially Kherson in order to prosecute the war with a minimization of loss of life of Russian soldiers and materiel. And so, yeah, he seems, I was very impressed by him. And he seemed no nonsense. He seemed to know exactly what the hell he was doing. He seemed scary as fuck. I mean, he looked like nobody to mess with, I mean, certainly not somebody you want to meet in a dark alleyway. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing, too, that about your dirty bomb thing. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk of that. And the fact that the Americans have been going on and on and on about nuclear weapons, right? When the Russians, Putin, nobody on the Russian side has even mentioned that. But the Americans are going all crazy on that. It seems to me projection. Seems to me that they are planning something just the way the CIA, told the Germans back a few months ago that something might happen to Nord Stream, be careful. And then it blew up. And it was obviously the Americans who did it. It seems to be that projection. And I'm very concerned of them using a nuclear weapon, not so much in Nikolaev. I'm thinking of that dam, the dam.
That's one.
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
Yeah, but I forget the exact name, but
Novakarovka,
Novakarovka,
right?
I think. And that specifically is the one that feeds the cooling pond for the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant.
Yeah, and they also, insofar as the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is concerned, they made another stab at it with a whole bunch of boats and all kinds of men and gear, and they got blown out of the water quite literally. Again, I mean, how many times have they tried to do that? It's like they, the definition of insanity. Keep on doing things that don't work and never change. I mean,
expect the same result.
But
go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing in Kherson is very interesting because there's a lot of ways the battle could go. For example, the fact that the removing the civilians clearly means. So some people say, yeah, removing the civilians is the first step, and then they'll move on the other side of the Dnieper, maybe. But like Mike said, if you remove all the civilians, especially friendly civilians from the battle area, you can do literally. You have carte blanche. You can do whatever you want. You can turn every meter into a trench, sniper nest, mortar. So it's going to be a tough battle. And apparently the Russians are doing fine despite HIMARS, the godly HIMARS trying to destroy the bridges. Somehow the Russians still can get supplied. So once again, the situation might not be as difficult as it might seem. And the Russians apparently have already prepared a third line of defense to where they can pull back towards the Dnieper without leaving this breachhead. I think they don't want to leave this breachhead because they know that if they abandon Kherson completely, going over the Dnieper would be so complicated. Like they would have to do an amphibious landing, oppose against enemy forces. It's so complicated. So they say, okay, we're going to pull back, but we're never going to give it up. Because like you guys said, if they want to do a counteroffensive, they need to start from somewhere. And for now, they're just going to wait until fall. The Russians are in no rush, in my opinion. Rush.
They've got everything going for them. And this arbitrary deadline of early November is, I think it's going to trigger them to do something, to do the Zelensky regime, to do something really stupid. And I think that a full-on, human wave attack on Kherson, the thing that I keep insisting upon is that, all of these offensives that have gone over the last 6-7 weeks, the number of men who have been killed is astronomical. And so, you run out of men. I mean, forget about the gear. They've obviously already run out of gear if they're going around to the West begging for any scrap that the West can send their way, insofar as materiel is concerned. And the men, they're gone. And so I'm thinking that this could be the last throw of the dice of the Zelensky regime. And if they throw like human waves, as they've been doing in these offensives, it could be that it finally breaks the Zelensky regime forces and it becomes a cakewalk. I mean, that's my thinking. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I'm wary of stepping into the trap of last roll of the dice, because it has been said a couple of times before.
Yeah.
And I fall into that myself. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I'm wary of it. But if we're, I don't want to be accused of copium now, but the truth of the matter is, as reported by the Russian media, it's not the Ukrainian army that's being fought. It's now NATO, increasingly a NATO army in different sheep-dipped, as the term may be. So, okay, there's still life left in there in the ways that they can prosecute things. You're right, Gonzalo. I agree with you. The early weeks of November would be probably the worst time, the worst point between summer and winter to do it with regards to terrain. I saw it about a week or two ago. You were seeing tanks like digging trenches as they were moving through these fields. It was so sodden. Already in St. Petersburg, I'm getting a slight crunchy frost in the morning. So the temperatures are going low up this far north. So it's going to take about 2 weeks probably to start working its way down that far south, which I would say would put it to late November, early December, perhaps middle of December as well, before the ground properly freezes to support those tons of vehicle. So yeah, early November I think would be the worst. And this is where I agree with Alex in that the Russians know this. They're taking their time. They're familiar with general winter. So it'd be far better for the Russians to wait to early December before then committing to any forward movement over that terrain into those open fields, it has to be said.
So you guys think that this might be winding down by, say, February, March?
It depends on the result of the battlefield.
Yeah, either winding down or blowing the lid off this.
Yeah, but it would be NATO blowing the lid off this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but honestly, okay, maybe I'm 100% coping, but I don't see people ready to go to World War III like right now.
And plus, think about December. You're then heading into January, forecast to be the worst month for the West when it comes to energy.
Yeah,
and other things.
And also, like, I think the Russians are also playing this game where they're positioning some troops in Belarus. They're moving troops around. You know, it's like a wolf lurking around you, and and you don't know where the attack is going to come from. It could come from Belarus towards Kiev. Oh, it could go towards Kharkov. It could go keep going from Donbass. It could go towards Zaporozhye. I think if a huge Russian offensive would come from it, it would be towards Zaporozhye and Dnipro. Because they control the Dnieper. This would be a devastating blow. Of course, they could attack also on Nikolaev, but these places would be very bad for Ukraine to lose. So, and the Ukrainians know it. That's why they're not launching a huge offensive in Zaporozhye, because they're like, okay, if we lose too many men there, it's over. Like the Russians counterattack. For Kherson, yeah, I think the election in the U.S. has also a lot to do with it. Like you guys said, the weather. So they're going to keep attacking. For now, they're launching little blows left and right to see the configuration of the Russian defenses. Because, yeah, we see on the map a line, but when you attack on the ground, you want to see every trench. You want to know every place where there's troops hidden. So it's sad to say, but the Ukrainians might be sending some cannon fodder forward just to know where the Russians are shooting from.
And these positions are all going to change, because the assumption that I feel from the West is that, so all this quoted 300,000, they're all going to southern Ukraine. But it's quite obvious, even from the media here. I think some Western publications are acknowledging the buildup of forces in Belarus. It's not just there, but Belgorod as well. I agree, it's more than 300,000. They're going to be spread around, and you won't know where it's going to come from. Is it going to come from the rear, the side, or from the south, as we expect? But I foresee initially the southern forces are mainly defense, and then maybe there's some shaping and pinning of the battlefield in these other regions, even feints. This move about chopping off that railway link in the north by Kiev, I don't want to dismiss that idea. I think I think it'll be temporary. Yeah, it's logical. Maybe like they did in February, where they move forward, hold it for sufficient time, then
wait,
fall back.
Where? What attack? In what direction?
Yeah, I think Kiev to Poland, there's a railway line that's the main artery of
Okay,
NATO
in Western
supplies.
Ukraine. Okay, Western Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
West of Kiev, there's a line that's sort of like parallel to the border between Ukraine and Belarus that runs from Kiev all the way to Lviv, I do believe.
Yeah, okay, Lviv in this in this area. Okay, Volyn and all this. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and
in
the idea would be to
theory,
establish fire control over that rail line and those roads.
in theory, it's a short, sharp grab to do that. Another reason I think why they tried to get these what do they call them, like observers, NATO observers on the Belarusian border, just to try and prevent this short, sharp grab of that rail link, because these missiles will only keep them de-energized for so long.
You're talking about the flying Doritos?
Yeah, that's another topic as well, this hoo-ha about those. But yeah, this overall strike on the infrastructure grid, unless they really ramp it up to destroy irreparable stuff, it's only going to be like a week, 2 weeks delay before NATO
but
supplies.
if you keep on hitting those particular targets with these El Cheapo drones, right? The flying lawnmowers or whatever they're calling them. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's going to take a week or two. You fix it and they blow it away again, and on the cheap. That's the worst part, because
I covered it today. The Guardian talking about it's at least double the cost to shoot down Geran 2. People are saying it's Iranian, and then Peskov is adamant that no, you see, it's Russian names, Russian equipment. So there's all aspects of this, but they're hilarious, and it's not funny, but I still laugh at it because I find it hilarious. But firing one of these super duper AA missiles at this tiny little, and it goes boom, straight past U-turns and hits the block of flats. That's not funny.
It's tragic, of course, for the people there, but it is funny. I mean,
comedic tragic, and it's like how many how many tens of thousands of dollars just flew past this little balsa wood model airplane? That's kind of how I see it. And then that just went on and went pop bang, and then this missile came along and then also went pop bang. Like, oh, and then the BBC focuses on the missile. Look what the drone did. No, it didn't.
Yeah, because like what happens with the drones, as I understand it, is that its heat signature is so slight that the missiles can't lock onto it. And on top of that, paradoxically, they're flying so slowly because they only run like about a couple of 100 kilometers per hour. And so they're so slow and so lacking in any kind of heat signature. That,
is it a Wankel engine? It's a cool name.
A what?
Did I get it right? A Wankel engine.
A Wankel engine? I've never heard of
that. I don't know.
Hilarious.
It's a British expression. I don't know. Wankel.
No. It's
wanker is
chat. Help me out.
masturbator.
Yeah, I know, which is why it's hilarious. I believe it's called a Wankel engine after the inventor. I think he had Wank in his name somewhere.
Wankel engine.
Wankel engine, rotary engine.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a lawnmower engine. That's
it's
what
like
they're
a little
fucking
chainsaw.
doing.
Yeah.
That is fun. I mean, it's hilarious if you think about it. And it's so. I was talking about this a couple of days ago with the guys from Russians with Attitude. They're great guys. You guys should get in touch with them. I'll pass on their email. But the point of those two guys, I was mentioning the fact that what's paradoxical is that we have all this high-tech gear, right? But the Iranians, let's just posit for the time being that it was Iranian designed, and perhaps the Russians are building them under license or something like that, which would be perfectly reasonable. You see, the Iranians, because of all the sanctions, instead of trying to do something high tech and compete on a high tech level, they went the opposite direction of just being ingenious, low tech. I always think
the
of
NASA problem with the pen. By pencils.
Everybody uses that. I came up with that first. I
heard that years ago.
My territory. I'm marking my territory. Yeah, the story is, for those of you in chat who don't know, that NASA spent $1 million for a pen that would work in zero gravity, and the Russians just used a pencil, and problem solved. Yeah. But it's paradoxical. I mean, the serious point, it's paradoxical how this time we're seeing essentially peer-to-peer. I think that we can all agree on that. And it's low tech that is the big surprise. And the fact that a drone took down a MiG-29.
Yeah, I reported that.
I mean, holy cow. It basically says that a modern fighter aircraft or sophisticated aircraft is useless against this El Cheapo crap.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Gonzalo, but in fairness to the MiG-29, it shot down the Garand 2, but let's say that engine, which is probably the biggest lump of metal in it, flew into the jet intakes.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. You know,
Soon they're gonna go back to biplanes. You know, they're going back to,
slow enough.
they're gonna go back to World War I aircraft.
Yeah, because those big planes, how slow can they go? Well, potentially extremely slow. But in that kind of situation, the guy's doing 400 knots, and you got a piece of shit flying Dorito looking for the dip, and that thing is going at what, maybe 70 knots, 80 knots. Yeah, it gets sucked into the engine and kaflooey, you know.
Yeah. But the other fascinating thing, like to go on the World War I analogy that I've made, is now we're seeing drone dogfights.
Oh yeah, I posted it. I posted it on my shorts. Yeah.
Now, in fairness, I think I got it around the wrong way. So the clip that I saw was posted in a Russian channel with very little explanation. So I assumed it was a Russian footage from a Russian-controlled drone. They're both DJIs, right? I think. And then others are saying, actually, it was a Ukrainian drone.
Yeah, but we don't know.
I don't care.
We're talking military porn, so sides don't matter. It's just gear.
Yeah. Although I can't wait for a little DJI with a Nazi cross on it, Wehrmacht cross, to go up against a Russian one. That would be great. And they have like Biggles and the Fokkers going around. Woo! They're specializing in those maneuvers to knock off the props, the rotors on top. So the one that can come above and drop onto the other drone is the winner, technically, and ramming them. I thought that was fascinating. It's kind of like that other Genesis moment that we had in 15 when the
I think it was 15. Yeah,
15.
Because before that, as I understood it, the planes of the two forces would pass each other because they were spotters, and so they'd wave at each other.
Well, they'd wave, and then it turned into 6-shooters or revolvers, like pop, pop. That, and then they thought, I'm going to slap a Vickers on this bad boy. Oh, I shot my propeller off. Whoops.
Yeah. That's how it happened. It's just fascinating. I mean, purely from a military porn perspective, to see the changes and how. What's interesting to me is that all the Americans sent the M777s, the HIMARS, all this crap, right? Very high tech, very state of the art, and all the rest of it. But what the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine complained about, and they shut him up almost immediately. He complained that the M777s, they could go for like 5 to 7 hours of shooting, and then they have to rebore the gun and send it back to Poland, you know, because it was so delicate. It was, it had tremendous firepower, but it was so delicate and needed constant maintenance. Whereas the Russian equivalent, you just shoot it all day, no problem. You know, much more robust in that regard. And that's what happens when you allow the military-industrial complex to have free reign. Because, of course, the MIC is thinking to itself, oh, we want gear that needs a lot of spare parts, a lot of maintenance, so we make more money off the gear. You know, I mean, that seems to me pretty obvious about the weakness of the vulnerability, rather, of Western weaponry, that it's so delicate, it's glass, it's not robust enough, you know.
To go the other way, Alex, maybe you can weigh in on this because I'm not too familiar about it, but I reported a story about a Russian platform. Of course, the West has an analog of this, or maybe the Russians created an analog of the Western platform. So it's a small tank-like tracked vehicle, but it itself is not necessarily weaponized. It's mainly like an infantry support vehicle upon which you can bolt on all these various attachments, indeed weapons, like a coaxial machine gun, whatever. The point is, the Russians are developing systems where they're creating what they call the swarm. So it is communicating networked on the battlefield with 15 drones overhead. So this is kind of just like a little automated army runs ahead, able to defend itself against various threats, but it's swap out and interchangeable. I know the West has one, but I've forgotten the name of the Russian platform. Perhaps again, chat can pick up the slack.
Yeah, I heard about it. I don't know I don't remember the name, but I remember this. But
it's a strange name.
Yeah, but both sides are using automated stuff. But what Gonzalo was saying that's true is that they're turning to low to cheap stuff. For example, at first they were talking about Bayraktar drones. Oh yeah, and even that got too expensive, knowing that the Bayraktar were already the cheapest there. Okay, maybe there was the Chinese drones that were cheaper, but they were already very cheap. And then now they're turning to like little drones you can buy online, and they're like, oh, these are more
turned the
useful.
cookie. It's the marker platform. It's called.
Okay, I'll check it out. Marker platform.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was referred to in the press that I saw. But Mitchell Oates, you get a cookie.
How do you write it?
Marker.
Marker. Oh yeah, the Marker robotic platform. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the Marker. I'll put it in the chat.
By the way, another thing that's going on. Oh, Alex, let me make you a moderator. I don't see you.
I just commented, but
okay, great. Yeah, I'm gonna make you a mod. Yeah, you'll have the blue wrench. Use it.
Oh yeah.
Use it wisely. Yes, use it wisely.
I don't even know how to use it, so.
oh no, you can like
the ban hammer.
The ban hammer. Yeah, there you go. Post something and you'll see your.
Actually, I could make a video about the robotic platform. You gave me a good idea of the topic.
Cut me in, man.
Yeah.
Share some of that sweet money from Susan. Come on.
Yeah, I might do a video about it. It's interesting.
Also, comment something so I can wrench you too while we're at it. No,
it is interesting. It is simple. I find that it's technically high tech, having network drones above all, but it's a simplistic system and a durable platform, and that's the point you're making, Gonzalo. But the durability, the D30 artillery might not be pretty, but it gets the job done for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show that the Western alliance really following the American lead, and one could argue the American diktat. It's geared up for a completely different kind of warfare, where they have total air superiority. And that's an issue that's come up insofar as air defense systems are concerned. The West doesn't have any, nothing near what the Russians have. And so that's the big, the big problem that they're having. They don't have enough air defense, and the air defense that they have is garbage compared to what the Russians are deploying. And on top of that, the Russians aren't even deploying their top gear. They're using the S-300. Not the S-400, or let alone the rumored S-500.
Yeah, so, isn't the S-500 capable of knocking out satellites?
Apparently, it can blow away anything in the sky. They tested it on Venus. Venus is gone. I mean, like that kind of air defense system. It's all kinds of powerful.
Which the Indians want in on.
Well, yeah,
it's like
because they're worried about Pakistan, but I don't think that the Russians would let go of that gear.
It's like the Russians didn't use the T-14 Armata tank either. It's been spotted near the front, but they haven't actually sent it either. It's their new tank apparently. Well, but there's a lot of tech they haven't sent.
Yeah, they're being smart because they recognize if they were to lose one of these tanks, it would be shipped back to Langley, Virginia, or wherever the hell, and taken apart, and they'd figure out how to defeat it. And I do believe that they lost a couple of T-90s, and the Americans were all over it. I mean, they literally shipped it back to the States to take it apart.
I remember seeing that footage of one T-90 shooting the other one up the backside because it got disabled or something. They're trying to destroy it, and then they were cutting out the Russian tank shooting it and saying it was Ukraine that did it. That was a little while ago.
Oh, so it was like they suicided one of their tanks instead of letting it fall in there.
Yeah, they tried to scuttle it, so to speak. I don't know if that's the same one you're talking about, but that was the last time I've seen T-90s.
But talking about tanks, have you seen that video where you see a Ukrainian film crew they found a BMP, a Russian armored vehicle, and then they painted stuff on it, and there was an entire film crew adding smoke and painting stuff on it, and it just made me realize. I talked to a few people, and they said, how much would it cost Ukraine to have a team of painters that go on the battlefields, just repaint the vehicles? They're the same on both sides anyway. Just have a paint crew, repaint it, put a V, a Z, and they're like, oh, you see, this is a destroyed Russian tank. They've lost 10,000 tanks. And I'm like, okay, but if Ukraine has lost no tanks so far, why do they need Polish ones and from other countries so bad? Like, this is the thing that makes me so mad about the Western media, is that there's no logic, there's no rational thinking. I'm like, guys, keep up with your lies. Come on. Like,
I mean, at least be consistent in your lies. You know,
be consistent. So, but yeah, how much would it cost to repaint a Russian tank into a Ukrainian tank destroyed, or Ukraine BMP? Anyway, it's half burnt. Just repaint it.
Precisely because of that, you'd see the fresh paint. It would be, insofar as propaganda is concerned, there are so many autists out in the internet that they'd instantly spot if it had been repainted. I mean, the fact is, you know, insofar as internet autism is concerned, you know, early on in this conflict, I saw videos from a guy called James Vasquez claiming that he had, you know, helped take out 5 Russian tanks. They were all Ukrainian tanks, and you could spot it pretty easily, you know. But the camera was moving around fast enough that it was hard to tell. But if you stopped it and you noticed the details, you're like, yeah, this shit's bullshit. Yeah, look. Ultimately, they're not interested in convincing, you know, people who are really into it. They're just trying to get the broad strokes to the public to convince them that number one, it seems to me that they want to convince them that the Zelensky regime is winning, and number two, it gives them cover for some sort of false flag operation, like Nord Stream, which, I mean, I could not believe that when I heard that. And number two, and much more dangerously, a potential dirty bomb or some sort of nuclear weapon that they smuggle in from the West. I mean, look, that's the thing that scares the shit out of me. And I'm not kidding around. I mean, I'm dead serious here. I'm hoping that the Russians, the FSB or whomever is in charge of this, has some sort of fucking Geiger counter who's scanning the country to make sure that no nuclear weapon is brought into Ukraine. Because I think that the West, I think that they've lost their mind. I mean, like the British expression, lost the plot. And I do believe that they're going to plant a bomb and blow it up and, you know, and blame the Russians. And the public in the West, I mean, there's such cows, such cattle, you know, such sheep, that they'll say, bae, bae, okay, bae, you know, I mean, that kind of attitude. I mean, it really, I'm not kidding around. It really scares me because these people are clearly desperate. I mean, I'm talking about the Western leadership class. They're crazy. I mean, I'm sorry. That's the only thing I can think of, you know? And I think it was Alexander Mercouris who said that the fact that the German leadership is not throwing a complete hissy fit over the destruction of Nord Stream shows that the leadership class in Germany is not beholden to the people. They are not the democratic representatives of the people of Germany. They are the agents, the colonial representatives of the United States. I mean, that insofar as, I mean, I think that Alexander was right on the money, and I don't think that there's any other way to look at it. Sorry for ranting, but you know what I mean? I mean, these people fucking scare me, you know? I mean, no kidding around. I trust Putin and the Kremlin a hell of a lot more than I trust Biden and Foggy Bottom, you know, because those guys are nuts. Sorry, I'm ranting, man.
Well, the thing with Putin is, and maybe it's a weakness of his as well, is he does seem to operate within the framework of agreements, laws, and so on. Okay, picks his words carefully, and I'm sure maneuvers in the background as everyone else does, but at least appears to at least know what those boundaries are. But when it comes to the others, they don't have a clue what treaty was signed or what they're party to or whatever. I don't think this trust ever. No, they don't care. Get their end. When you say that, yeah, the increasingly desperate behavior, I don't really want to entertain the notion of things going dirty bomb and then retaliatory strikes and all that. No one really wants to go that way. So on the one hand, their behavior kind of says that they would, but then that other part of you says, nah, they would.
Nord Stream. That's my response.
But talking about Nord Stream, have you seen how Sweden told Germany that they know who did it, but they can't show them?
Yeah, then you got infighting and funny games.
Yeah, and there were a lot of memes. I remember there were a lot of memes about Germany. So you had the broken pipeline, and then you had all the countries in circle around it, and then the Germans are like, who did it? And everybody looks at each other because they all could be guilty of it, all the neighboring countries, but we know who did it. And somehow in the media they say, yeah, the Russians blew it up. Like I saw an entire video on YouTube that got millions of views about how the Russians blew up Nord Stream, and I'm like, you gotta be insane. You gotta be actually batshit crazy. Who, like, no, like, this is beyond the rational thinking. So yeah, they're bombing their own nuclear power plants. What's next? They're gonna bomb their own troops. They're gonna bomb their own stuff. Oh yeah. So
no, they're
How
gonna
can you
drop
talk
a
about
Sarmad on
logic
the
and
Kremlin.
rationale when the UN's saying that Russia's giving their troops Viagra?
oh yeah, I saw it. But who, like, what the hell?
and Viagra, man, it's so short lasting. You need something more long lasting, like Cialis.
You'd know, Gonzalo. You'd know. I'm still.
Oh yeah. Oh, I left myself open to that.
Boom! You walked right into that one.
Oh, Mike,
too easy.
You know, oh, fuck
feel
you,
bad now.
Mr. Hatman. You know,
feel bad.
with your fashion show of hats. Oh, bastard, Alex, save me, man. This guy.
I can't. I'm gonna pull back on this one.
That was a good one, Mike. That was prima. I walked right into that. Yeah,
I was waiting for it. I was like, you walked in the trap. I was like, oh
right
boy.
into that. Oh,
in Russia, Viagra take you.
Oh, chat, help me, chat. You're the only guys on my side. Hit me with a -1 for Mike.
Devastating,
bastard. Yeah,
devastating. Stuff.
Oh, that was funny. That was.
Isn't Viagra made by Pfizer, Gonzalo?
Oh,
no.
Sorry, another one.
Oh, double tap.
In truth, though,
you.
so it's manufactured by an American company.
Shut
so
up,
you want me
you
to
Putin
believe?
agent. Shut up, you Kremlin bot. You know, God damn it. You know,
you want me to believe that Pfizer is bypassing sanctions? That Pfizer's accepting payments or licensing or
I wouldn't
whatever.
be surprised.
Yeah,
you know, I would not be surprised. You know, I mean, like,
I wouldn't put it past them. They're dodgy bastards. But
no, they're all dodgy.
at the UN, you want to present that case like seriously with a straight face. Oh, and I don't know if it's true. Did the Madagascar minister get fired for
Yes, he did.
Voting against Russia?
Yeah, he got cashiered on the spot, apparently.
But
apparently it went directly against what the president of Madagascar had said. I mean, Madagascar is trivial in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
But I think that he wanted to make sure that the Russians knew that he wanted no part of that bullshit. And he was smart, I think.
But you know, Mike, you were talking... you guys were talking about Germany and how Putin kind of wants to keep things within the law, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think he always hopes that he will have relationships with the West eventually, like with Europe at least, because somehow I know, for me, he knows that for now the situation is bad, but there's still this hope that he can build something with the West eventually. Not now.
No.
But
I think
I
that was
feel
the
that
case. I think now it's about
maybe now not, but for a long time
China
at least.
on side.
Yeah, but the thing is, in my opinion, the big fear of the US was that there was this Eurasian alliance forming up. Basically, it would be German knowledge, Russian resources, and Chinese industry. And they knew that if these three would be together, which they were, like factually they were in some sort of alliance, that they would be impossible to beat. And they're like, okay, no, they would be too strong because Germany has super high-tech stuff they were already sharing with the Russians. And they're like, okay, we're going to pull the plug.
I would entertain that notion further ahead in regards to future relations with whatever remains of the West.
Yeah.
In regards to once these puppets, I don't know what'll happen to them, but let's say the citizens rise up and regime change all those buggers, and the US, which was going to collapse, once it's collapsed and in the pieces and the rubble, maybe there'll in the future be opportunity to then have a relationship in the future in this multipolar world that Blinken shit his pants over.
Yeah,
I can't imagine a world without Washington.
There's something else going on too, Mike, insofar as Turkey is concerned. You know, Putin is offering the Turks to be essentially the exclusive supplier of Russian gas to Europe. Now, that strikes me as a move against Europe. And I think that Putin, Alex, to your point, I think that he's given up the ghost on Europe. And I think more importantly, the Russian people and certainly the Russian leadership class, they've also given up, they've written it off. I think that for the foreseeable future, i.e. the next 10, 20 years, Russia is just going to ignore Europe, and they're going to deal with Turkey insofar as Europe is concerned. And I think that that's part of the reason that there's this delegation that's going over to Turkey.
But Gonzalo, how many times historically have Russia and Turkey been allies? Like literally allies? I can tell you.
Never. Yeah,
they've always fought each other. And I think this is maybe a short-term alliance, but they know that the Turks can switch sides at any moment, and they're not. For now, what's surprising for the Russians is how Iran is actually a good ally, the only one. Yeah. Like China has been playing also in the middle, like
well, they have to.
Like they're playing on the sidelines, and but Iran was like, well, we have 3,000 sanctions anyway. Welcome to the club, and they're like doing something together. So I think for Russia that was interesting to see who their allies are. Right?
Well, but, I think what's really interesting is that a lot of people in Russia, of course, are criticizing Putin, saying that he should have gone on strong, like they're going now. He should have gone in strong, back in February. But I think that the period between February and October has allowed the Russian diplomacy, the maneuver room, to get everybody on side. And so you could say, oh, they should have done this from the very get-go, but they would have alienated so many people, especially people in Russia. It takes a while for people, both domestically in Russia and outside of Russia, who are watching this, to realize, oh, this is what's going on. It really is a NATO war against the Russians.
And it's actually been 8 years, though, hasn't it, Gonzalo?
Yeah, it has. But
because he got the criticism in 2014 for not doing this back then.
I don't think they could. I don't think exactly. The gear and the men and everything necessary to conduct this kind of operation.
Nor the Mir system, nor these other things they put in place. So this is where I mean he operates with that foresight, but within. So he even went along with the Minsk Accords twice. Dotting the I's, crossing the T's, immense patience and foresight with all this, which I think plays in. So when people are zoomed in on the micro and like, this has happened. Oh, Russia's going to lose. It's like, as Putin said, you've got to know your history. Have you not learnt yet the kind of theme that's ongoing and running here is that there's a far longer game that's playing, and it's not about social media likes at all. It's not factored in. And as we see in the soft power game, Russia doesn't care. It's like, you have your PR victory by all means, but when we bitch slap you later on,
exactly. We're winning the war. That's
and also, have you guys seen the infighting between Poland and Germany?
That's fucking funny.
Was it $1 trillion they wanted in reparations as well?
Yeah, so there's this huge thing in reparations, and there were memes that the Germans were like, no problem, we'll pay, but we want Silesia and Pomerania back. So that's the first thing. And then now Poland is saying that the Germans owe them 200 tanks, and the Germans are like, yeah, we can only send them to you starting in spring 2023. And then the Poles are mad at the Germans, and so there's this entire infighting. And then
the Polish sold their T-72s for 46% of their value, didn't they?
No, I mean,
and then there's this thing where the Germans are also kind of going around their own rules. For example, how come Hungary can do everything it does without being penalized? So I heard someone say online again. They said that Germany actually is kind of playing a double game sometimes. That
they're all playing double games.
Yeah, but for Hungary, they use Hungary now to withdraw a lot of their industry there to safeguard it, because Hungary has cheap energy. So they're like, okay, we're gonna withdraw there to not have too many losses, let's say. But it's interesting to see how they're all maneuvering, and it just makes the argument of a European Union sometimes. Like, you're like, okay, you guys are union, or what are you? Like, they're all playing against each other. Imagine Texas playing against California, playing against Minnesota. Yeah. So there is competition, but now they're all plotting against each other. Like, what is this?
And Orban is a goddamn legend.
Yes,
some of the stuff he said.
that guy is just off the charts.
Yeah. And if you can't have Putin as your leader, Orban is a good follow up.
Yeah, but the Europeans, they are falling apart, and I don't think that I don't think there's any way to stop it because of the energy crisis. I think that as the energy crisis deepens during this winter, more and more divisions are going to pop up, because especially, each of these countries is going to have huge domestic crises insofar as very, very unhappy people. And that, I think, will inevitably lead to the European leadership class really cracking down on their own people. That's my view of it at this point. I mean, we'll see how the winter plays out, but I think it's going to be a fucking ugly winter insofar as Europe is concerned, and there's no way to stop it.
The first ugly winter.
Yes.
Because next year is going to be catastrophic.
Why do you think the next year will be worse than this one?
Because at least they have, I know they're lying about the levels, but at least they have some gas. How they can even hope to have suitable levels for winter 2023 is just beyond me. And the Italian energy conglomerate ENI said exactly this just last week, I think it was. I reported. I'd been saying it for a couple of weeks prior, but ENI, and I think you've made this point as well, Gonzalo, but ENI came out, I think it was last week, to say that never mind this winter 2023 is the one that's going to kick us in the butt.
Yeah, I think.
And that's only just one aspect of this entire mess. Now, I think this was a lie. I haven't been able to corroborate it either through official sources or through people around the world, specifically Germany. But I was told that in Germany, I knew back in October, weren't they supposed to deploy the police or army to help the police? But there was this notion that come the winter, there will be a deal whereby you can have either a discount or some forgiveness on your energy bills if you sign up to like crowd control, basically against the protesters. Now, I think at this point that may be BS, but given the deep state and their methods, I wouldn't put it past them framing a piece of legislation that in a very sanitized way basically delivered that power. So you sign up for the dark side.
Right.
And
so you basically you sign up to the dark side as a snitch, as I'm forgetting the slang
could be
word.
A snitch.
Yeah, basically an agent of the state, and you'll get discounts on your energy bill. Dude, that is a recipe for turning people against people. That is, I haven't heard that. This is the first I'm hearing of that.
Okay, but keep it in the back burner, and it could just be complete, absolute rubbish. But I'm trying to find out from people in Germany if they've sniffed anything like this, because Anya Kay on Through the Eyes of, she's brought to light some Polish legislation that's being reworded, and some really sinister changes to existing legislation. Not quite like this line. It's stuff like government powers in the case of another health scare or something. There's other plans afoot. But there was just this weird rumor about how Germany in particular might try and suppress its own population by basically buying people out. And if it were true, I could believe it.
Jesus Christ. I mean, I mean, the level, man, this is supposed to be the democracies, the democracies and all this shit. Bullshit. I mean,
I just reported today about all these journalists that are being fired from their jobs, the foreign observers that are being sanctioned. That Adrian Boak, John Mark Dugan just did an interview with him, the guy who they attempted to assassinate in Istanbul as he was trying to reapply for another Russian visa. The SBU nearly got him in Istanbul. But these are
I didn't hear that story. What's that story? What's the
Adrian Boak, the guy who testified in France. Oh, there's more to the story as well. Yeah, so he went back to France, was immediately arrested. His lawyer.
This person? I'm confused.
Adrian Boak.
He was a guy who was there as a foreign volunteer for medical services, I think, and he was in Kyiv, and he says that Bucha was a scam, like that it didn't happen the way it did, and he called out a lot of the Ukrainian as right-wing sector people and stuff. Then he did so on TV, on French TV.
Oh right, I remember that. That was
you would have seen it on Telegram go around, this little clip where he was very clear about what happened from his perspective, from his experience. He was arrested allegedly in France by the government, beaten, they claim, denied his medication, which either was responsible or partly contributed to having a heart attack that got him in hospital. He then got out of there and got out the country. Then he suffered this attack in Istanbul. And the whole point of the story is through this behavior, it's forcing these people into the arms of the Russian Federation. And now State Duma are looking at mechanisms to give foreign observers and foreign journalists Russian citizenship. And they're kind of arguing in the one article that I featured, they're arguing the rationalization is, well, a load of Russians just left to escape. They're not worthy of their Russian passport. We'd rather give it to these people.
Wow.
That's a powerful incentive, you know?
For telling the truth. And that woman who filmed the Donbass documentary recently, French again, and amazing how many French people. Yeah, she got fired from the university she worked at for doing that.
Yeah, University of Paris. She'd been there for 15 years.
Yeah, fired.
But there's discussion also about France as whatever geopolitically, whatever happens with the war in Ukraine, they have lost because, well, this is again what I've heard, but it makes sense. Essentially, if Ukraine wins, France loses because they will be blamed for not helping enough. And if Russia wins, well, the French have made such statements against the Russian government that they're barred from entry. So whatever happens, they lost. And that's interesting to see how it's going to turn out.
You know, they keep saying that Putin has painted himself into a corner. And I keep thinking to myself, no, it's the West. The West has painted itself into a corner, and they have no idea how to get out. And
he's painted himself into the three corners. I'll give them that. He's got the three corners.
It's the weirdest thing, you know, this constant projection of their own problems. They just project them onto the other side. And it's just bizarre. I mean, nobody seems to be talking about this. Or let me phrase it. In the West, of course, they can't talk about it because they drank the Kool-Aid. They're in on this bullshit. You know, it's just, look, I'm older than you guys. And so, like, all that's happening here is truly shocking to me. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we were supposed to be the good guys. The West were, you know, open, transparent. We'd call bullshit when we saw it from our own governments. And now, in the last 15, 20 years, it's gone in a completely different direction, really from the 9/11. You know, the bullshit keeps on piling up so fast. And nobody counters it, and everybody, you know, some guy was writing a book. I read about this. He was writing a book on the Afghan withdrawal, and the FBI went, seized all his gear, arrested him. I mean, they disappeared him. They disappeared him like in a fucking Latin American republic, for crying out loud. And that's the fucking FBI in the United States, and nobody's saying anything. Everybody's like, oh, hum-de-dum, it happened again. Somebody gets deplatformed from one of these monopolies, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. And, oh, well, you know, it's a private company. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, you know? And by the individual, well, he must have deserved it.
Yeah. I mean, holy shit. And so you're telling me, Mike, about the legalism of Putin. I appreciate that legalism, you know, and that impetus to make everything really legal and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, because you're looking at the West that is becoming increasingly lawless, where the governments and the monopolistic corporations have their run.
It goes a lot further, actually, Gonzalo. And given that you've got time to read, I'll forward you a Telegram channel that I've been invited to, where there's a court case going on in Russia. And I haven't done all my reading, so I'll have to give you a very rough, brief overview. The main theory being, with Yeltsin and Clinton and that shit show that happened just before Putin's days, 1993, I believe, is when the Russian Constitution was drafted. And of course, it was done with US help. And on that framework, and actually, I think I've got it here.
Is that constitution, that Russian constitution, still in force, or did they change it?
Yes, still in force today. And there is clause 15, article 15, clause 4. You can go archive.government.ru. If you Google Russian constitution, you'll find it. I've been pointed to article 15, clause 4, universally recognized principles and norms of international law, as well as international agreements of the Russian Federation, should be an integral part of its legal system. If an intentional agreement of the Russian Federation establishes rules which differ from those stipulated by law, then the rules of the international agreement shall be applied.
Colonialism.
Long story short, it doesn't matter what rules you make in your country, you're still subservient to the international principles and norms. I mean, norms. What the hell?
Rules-based order, dude.
Yeah. So Russia is still, by its constitution, under the thumb of the international agreements of international law. So Putin's been wiggling around under this, and the rumor is he's working to get rid of this Article 15, Clause 4, and that's been sort of the whole remit, and that's what they're panicking about. But it goes a lot further to even the point where the Russian government, central bank still receives an 80-page dossier every month with instructions of what to do, and that
From the West,
from the IMF. So yes, is the answer.
And can we talk about the role of the UN in the world? Like how, like I don't since its beginning, like honestly, it started after World War II to avoid genocides and wars, but the 6 months after being implemented, there were already genocides and wars already, and it never stopped any genocides. It never stopped any war. I mean, what's the purpose of the UN at this point? It couldn't even help Haiti when there was this catastrophe, the earthquake. All the money went into gangs and everyone. So I'm like, at the end of the day, why? It's been discredited, but come on, it's been a long time that people don't take it seriously anymore. I think the height of it was in the 90s. Like after the fall of the USSR, people had hope that war would never come again in the world and that the UN would rule, and then it just collapsed.
The end of history didn't happen. Yeah, history kept on trundling along.
Yeah, the UN's proven itself to be corrupt, and I think Russia had hopes as well.
Useless.
They were parts of it. Sorry, just to backtrack. Realpolitics made the correct point. I think that clause was superseded in the constitutional referendum of 2020. So you see, he actually allegedly he managed to get past that one. Then the next step, and that was because of that big referendum, the one that the West picked up on about, I think it was propaganda, LGBT propaganda, whatever.
Yeah.
Now the IMF thing comes in because Putin, as you'll remember, with the pension age, he fought that to the very end, and the West then made a big hoo-ha about his U-turn, where he then had to concede. But that's due in part to the IMF. The theory is that you cannot create a ruble without the dollar. There's some mechanism in there that I need to research further, that the ruble is in a way a subsidiary of the dollar. And again, it's how the US kept their hands around the scrotum of Russia. So it's kind of he's fighting this way. And there's a court case going on Friday next month, I think, that I'm going to try and cover in Moscow, which goes to Gorbachev. There is a lawsuit being filed against Gorbachev and Ukraine and its formation. The logic is if the Russian Supreme Court rules on it in favor, then Ukraine becomes an internal issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super curious to this. I'm like, if it was that easy, I'm pretty sure Putin would have gone down this road, and if all this could be ended like that. But no one. The point is, no Russian media is covering it.
I honestly don't think that these legal maneuvers really matter as a practical issue. I mean, it's interesting, like on a theoretical level, but in terms of actually doing anything, actually having any real influence, and not even as PR, I don't think it really matters at this point, because I think that the gloves are off, the masks are off, and everybody recognizes that this is a NATO war against Russia, and it's when Stoltenberg said that if Russia wins, it would be a defeat for NATO, that pretty much sums it up. And it seems that what I just looking at it objectively, just standing back and looking at it, I think that a lot of people criticize Putin for being so slow and all the rest of it, but in the long run, it was much, much smarter because he essentially wore down not just the Ukrainians, but NATO. And as they got more and more desperate, they revealed their true colors more and more. And I think that was fucking smart. That was a real fucking smart. And if you think back to the Munich speech of 2007,
that was huge.
This has been going on for 15 years, basically, and he put them on notice.
Yeah.
And so you gotta admire the guy, whatever you think of him. Putin madman, Putin this or that. Yeah, but the guy is patient, methodical, and to have the foresight to do all the measures so that the thing that I see about Putin is that he has the patience for very long-term plans. Whenever I hear that somebody has like some big conspiracy, big long-term plans, I was like, fuck that. That's bullshit. But insofar as this guy is concerned, he actually pulls it off. And the other thing too that you notice is that he never makes a move unless he knows he can win. And that's something else that I find extraordinary, that kind of foresight and patience and self-control. I mean, it really is extraordinary.
I don't agree with Mark Galeotti in his book. We need to talk about Putin, and Mark Galeotti's gone off the other end of the spectrum now. He's going full propagandist, but he's really talking utter crap at the moment on YouTube, from what I've seen. Like,
I read that book. I actually have it.
Yeah, and in there he makes that point that I agree with, that Putin's actually quite cautious, sometimes to his detriment, maybe, certainly in the public view. But I will rephrase that as he is calculated.
Extremely.
And age has brought with wisdom, so I'm sure he has learned from past. The Chechen War was a good lesson, I think. Both of them, in fact.
The Chechen War is actually a very good example, because the first one, Russia lost. The second one, he decided to divide and conquer. Instead of facing all Chechens, he's like, you know what, we'll separate the Chechens, and we'll see that there's some Chechens that are closer to Russia, so the Kadyrov clan, and others that are influenced by the outside. So we'll turn them each other. They'll fight each other, and it got so much easier after that, because then they got all the intel. So who knows? They might pull something
now Kadyrov's
like that.
The man in charge, the warlord in charge.
Yeah, exactly. But that shows you how you go from an ideological war to a realistic perspective of your capabilities. And
as Brian highlights about Syria, the lessons learned there, which Surovikin is employing.
And perhaps eventually they want to do something similar in Ukraine. Perhaps the initial goal was exactly that: put a friendly regime there and call it a day. And I still think that it's the end goal, even though it's a bit more complicated now. But
no, I think that the end stage of this affair will be Russia taking over just about everything east of the Dnieper, and of course south, all the way to Transnistria. And what remains of Ukraine, I think that the Russians are counting on the break of Poland from the EU, because I think that, and you tell me what you guys think of this, that Putin at some stage of this next year, when he has a firm control over the entire country, he will dangle Western Ukraine to the Poles, the whole Galicia thing, right? And he'll dangle it, and the Poles will bite. They'll go for it, because they are so wrapped up in this notion of rebuilding the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and they'll go for Western Ukraine, and there will be this rump Ukraine state, which will be with a different regime, of course, and friendly to the Russians, like the way that Belarus is. And there'll be this Western slice of Ukraine that will go to Poland, and that will create all kinds of problems in Europe, because all of a sudden a lot of other small countries in Europe will say, hey, well, the Poles got their slice, we want ours in other areas, of course, of Europe. And all of a sudden you're going to have this cauldron, and the whole EU will start to collapse as everybody starts fighting everybody, especially as everybody becomes poorer in Europe. You see what I'm saying?
I have a question. Currently in Europe, there's a lot of people coming from the third world, from Africa, from the Middle East, going to Europe because of its wealth. But what if Europe becomes poor? Are they going to go back, or?
No, they're going to cause social unrest.
But that's the thing, because right now people go there because of the free welfare, the freebies, right?
Yeah, the golden.
But if there's nothing, but if there's no more money to scratch,
no more dibs.
The Ukrainians are finding that out in Germany already.
Yeah.
And leaving, and France.
Yep.
Actually, wasn't that person accused of Dugin's assassination? Didn't she do the rounds as well? She went somewhere like Germany, didn't like it, went to Paris, didn't like it, picked up by whoever.
I've seen a lot of Ukrainians in southern France, actually. When I was gone, nice. I've seen a lot of Ukrainian cars. Let's say it's not the old cars they were driving. Let's just say that.
No,
and let's just say that they were not in the poor areas. Like they were in the nice parts, but they're chilling there in the nice parts.
The scenario you described, Gonzalo, I can foresee happening after Zelensky's gotten torn apart, removed.
he's
Once it's
gonna be removed.
proved that it's almost too much hassle to try and bring Ukraine back under control somehow, that's when I foresee some divvying up. We've already got it now in Kiev, according to Dima on Military Summary and a couple of other non-official sources, about this resentment and dissent in Kiev now that they're actually experiencing what it's been like for Donetsk. There's questions asked, hang on, why didn't we abide by the Minsk Accords?
Yeah.
You promised us peace. Yeah.
Too late
you
now,
promised
buddy.
us peace as your election. And now I'm actually suffering. I don't like it. So
And the scam is that allegedly, the scam is that allegedly a lot of pro-Russians actually voted for Zelensky because
part of the
at the time he was kind of pro-Russian. He spoke Russian and he had this TV show that was very popular in Russia. So I think a lot of people that were Ukrainian but wanted peace with Russia voted for him, hoping to settle the deal. And then it just... But the problem is... The problem thing is that unlike Putin, I think Zelensky doesn't have a clan. So he was just a one guy who reached to the top. But since he doesn't have a clan, a group of powerful people backing him up, well, he got bitten by the big forces. Whereas Putin, when he came to power, he had a clan with him to back him up. Powerful people.
Yeah, but then Zelensky had that oligarch behind them, so he did have some propping up and protection. Kolomoisky. The one thing I neglected to mention when we were talking about drones is Ukraine's game-changing drone that they've developed, the one that can go 1,000 kilometers and hit St. Petersburg. And then upon closer inspection in Telegram, someone claimed it was actually a water boiler that they painted the Ukrainian.
You're kidding.
That was the claim that was made to me about what they released. They said, don't worry, Kiev, we're going to hit the Russians back now. And this can go 1,000 kilometers. Is that not the range of the Garan 2 as well? The Iranian derived.
I don't know, but what I do
they
know
said,
is
no,
that
we've got one.
Russian
Just wait.
System would take it out.
Just wait. Any day now, we're going to have our own drones that can fly all the way to St. Petersburg and get them there. And then I was like, okay, so you've got the range. Let's say you could even have it. Oh, they also said the payload is greater than the ones they're being hit with. So instead of 50 kilos, let's say
it's bigger than yours.
It's 75 kilos, baby. And this can fly 1,000 miles. And I thought, all right, I'm going to give you benefit of the doubt. I'm just going to entertain your notion for just a little bit. How do you even imagine that's going to fly all the way to St. Petersburg over all those air defenses or whatever, which are far better and numerous than Ukraine? But and then hilariously, someone messaged me and said, oh, by the way, if you look closely, that's a water boiler.
I mean, like in a realistic sense, I perhaps even insofar as ballistic missiles are concerned, the Russians are locked up tight. They've got layered air defenses of the aforementioned S-300, S-400, and S-500. I don't think that they have anything realistic to worry about.
And one thing I just remembered, one thing in the media that also triggered me is that we had this discussion before with Mike before the live started, that a lot of the media said, so many Russians are leaving the country. All right. But did they forget how many Ukrainians left the country? How many Ukrainian men left the country?
No, women.
Men and women.
Men did make a dash.
The richer guys were able to bribe people at the border.
A lot of guys, I saw a lot of Ukrainian guys in Europe, let's say, of fighting age. And so, but the thing is,
president of Poroshenko, the son rather of President Poroshenko, was spotted at some cafe in London, and he's military age, and he was, having tea in Oxford Market or whatever.
Don't forget Melnik losing his shit with Germany for pointing out his son studying there.
And people are now saying that what's the actual population of Ukraine today? Because the last census dated from like the 1990s. But apparently there's only like 35 million cell phones activated before the war instead of 45 million. So the population might be much smaller than we think it is. Plus all the people that left, like what's the actual population of the country? But Mike, tell us a second about what you told me
about
Russians coming in.
No, the population issue I think is really important, and I think it points to the breakage of the country, irrespective of what happens, because it's credibly estimated that something like 11 to 13 million Ukrainians have left, and let's just posit that at the start of this war there were 45 million. Okay, so that's roughly a quarter of the population that's split. 8 million apparently have gone to the West, and the other 3 have gone to Russia. Now, you also have to add the approximately 8 million people in the areas that are currently controlled by Russia in the Ukraine territory. So between those, let's say 11 million on the low side, plus the 8 million, you're talking 19 million people. So basically, the population of Ukraine has been cut in half. That seems to be credible at this point. I mean, it'll take years to sort out exactly how many people left and the ones who go back and all the rest of it. But yeah, it would seem at this point that they've lost 18 to 20 million out of a population of 45.
Yeah, I've just found the figures that I was shown for people who left and returned from Russia. So here's just one example where I actually find.
Can you translate for us?
Yeah. Roughly, yes. So on the top left, you've got is the Russia, that's from in red, and v Russia coming to Russia, 120,000. Then it's broken down by time frames. So 19th of August. Is that August 9th? No, that's September.
Yeah.
September. Yeah, there you go. So that's how many left, how many came in, how many left came in. And then you see there's an uptick where more came in the first week of October. So it's like the West might say, total up all the reds and go, oh, all this is left. But then they always fail to mention how many came back in. That was just one graph. And then there was the Kazakh border as well.
So from what country is that?
Russia.
But from Russia to where? Or is it overall?
So that's from Europe. Pereski Evropiski. I think it's from Europe. Someone in the chat might be able to correct me because my Russian's all right, but it's not that good. And this is after the beginning of mobilization. Сначала мобилизации.
What's interesting to me is that for Putin, this solves a big domestic problem.
Yeah.
The whole fleeing of people, because who left? It was the pro-Westerners, the anti-Putin crowd. They're the ones who left.
The liberals.
And so, this whole situation has been, I think, demographically a bonanza for him. In terms of getting rid of a population that was always going to oppose him, whatever he did.
And as you've said before, they did it the same for the oligarchs as well. He was struggling for years with them.
Yeah. And now they got gelded. I mean, totally gelded. And he can have his way. And what he's going to do, it seems very obvious to me, is that all these oligarchs that remain, he's going to slowly take them apart, because now the Russian state is really all powerful. And so he's not going to allow any kind of competing power, even economic power. And whatever oligarchs remain in Russia, I mean, there are oligarchs. There are rich people, of course. But I think that he's going to dismember them, little by little, in that very patient, methodical way of his. So I think, every way I look at it, this conflict seems to have been, it's going Putin's way. I mean, on every metric, the only front that he's losing is the Western propaganda war. But on every other metric, insofar as foreign policy is concerned, making very strong alliances with Iran and also China and India. I mean, now that India needs is getting all this oil, rather, and natural gas and the rest of it, they're not going to make any move to antagonize him. So foreign policy, the rest of the world is on his side.
China stopped LNG sales to Europe.
Yeah. So I mean, any way you look at it, foreign policy, domestic policy, finance, everything, it's going his way. It's unsurprising that he's got 80+% approval rating, because
something like 84 last I heard.
It's and he got rid of this essentially a fifth column. I mean, I hate to call that of any people of any country, but it's not that they were deliberately, a fifth columnist, quote unquote, traitors, but rather they just thought that Europe was much better than Russia. what's interesting too, I've been speaking to a few Russians who say that they've gone to the West, and a lot of them were people who went to Western universities, which, as we all know, is sort of like La La Land. It's not reality, and they thought that all of the West was like that, and they left Russia, they've gone to the West, and all of a sudden they're actually living the Western life, and they're like, I hate this, too late, you made your bed, you're going to have to sleep in it, and it's really a fascinating phenomenon. And insofar as the West is concerned, they are losing on every front except the propaganda front.
And there's also this thing that I thought about last night, actually. You know how Russia is a multicultural society. There is Muslims, there is also people that are Buddhists from Asia and everything. It's funny how you see every ethnic group of Russia joining the war effort. I mean, there's been some trouble in Dagestan, but largely speaking, every Russian district provided the troops and everything necessary. But I was wondering, imagine the UK had to go to war. Would every community in the UK also wind up so fast to recruitment offices? Would people do the same in Germany? Would people do the same in France, in Belgium? Would there be this national cohesion or not?
There's a little caveat to add to that, though. As I've reported, allegedly St. Petersburg has not met its quota, and people have got a rap under the knuckles. The Dagestan side, there was a bit of a hoo-ha. That I showed a video of the heads there, where, again, I think this lends back into the Soviet past of fulfilling quotas. So they went too ham, and they said every man must report to the thing, and he lost his shit. That guy didn't. He wasn't a guy that you looked like you wanted to cross. So shit rolls downhill. Putin officially said, the people heads will roll for this, and they have done, and they've been switched out. Dagestan was one of those where they identified that the system had basically not been used, been neglected, as you rightly said, Alex, before. So multiple regions have. There's also an argument that if things go to full mobilization, this is again another sign of Putin's cautiousness to shake out the dust and rust, where he's done partial, test the bureaucracy, test the mechanisms and the databases, to then ramp up to full mobilization if needed in the future. Because I think some of this has come as a bit of a surprise to Russia, that it's been allowed to get this far. So I think that's where some of the cautions come in. And then the imbalance, unfortunately, it has to be said, is quite economic. So the rural regions, where I think they just upped it now from 100,000 rubles a month to 195,000 rubles a month. If I think to a village outside of Smolensk that I've been, I think the salary is 20,000 a month that you could expect in the more rural parts. For St. Petersburg, 100,000, even 100,000 is, the average wage is 58. So 100 is, but is it worth the risk of actually having to do the dirty work sort of thing on the front line? But for a guy in the region, there were also record divorces of women who were divorcing men who either couldn't or wouldn't be mobilized. Because, she's going to say to him, hey, Dagestani or Tajikistani man, 195,000. How can you not go?
Hey, by the way, Mike,
push them out the door.
Mike, I want to ask you about that Tajikistan soldiers who shot up a bunch of. It was a shooting in Russia. I missed the details specifically, but apparently, like 11 men were killed by Tajikistan terrorists.
Are you talking about the border?
No, at some recruitment center or something like that.
That missed me as well. The actual details on that. I remember seeing on the Kazakhstan border, there were some fatalities and stuff. I did see some footage on one of these soy boys that ran away from Russia. He was showing some footage of wives in, let's say, Dagestan, who were protesting exactly the same that we've seen come out of Ukraine, of wounded men that were called to go back to the front line. The wives and the mothers were coming out protesting. So I think they found one of those in Dagestan to hold up and go, look, Russia bad, sort of thing.
No, what's interesting
I'm not
is
aware of that story.
Yeah, there were like 3 separate channels that I follow on YouTube of Russian citizens who would do English language videos showing life in Russia. And they've all left. I follow a number of them. I actually followed 5, and of those 5, 3 left. And they're all bad mouthing Russia, something awful.
One of them left to Georgia, I think.
Yeah.
One of them left
one?
to like Uzbekistan, and I was like, dude,
No,
what?
Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan.
Yeah, one of those.
I don't want to look at it up now because I'll fuck up, because my computer is way
Yeah.
underpowered, so I'll fuck up the stream.
Yeah.
But there was this girl Natasha, you know, that she had that channel Yay Russia, and she left to Georgia. There was a guy called a young kid called Nishikin, something like that, and he went to I want to say Finland or Estonia, perhaps, something like that. And there was another guy who looks like a prototypical Russian dude, right? Who'd lived like a long time in the States and then moved back to Moscow and then drove with his family from Moscow to, I think, Kazakhstan and split. And like they're doing content and like, you know, kind of like it's kind of amusing or kind of sad because they're trying to self-justify their decision. And you get the sense that they're like, oh, this was a mistake.
Yeah, they've got the worst of both worlds. So they're going in, they're trying to appeal to a society with huge Russophobia. They'll never be accepted. They'll never really be successful there, outside of being held up maybe by Western propaganda now and then as it suits them. Bit like that woman that protested on the Russian TV channel when it got a job in Germany. Then the Ukrainians protested against her, and now she was back in Moscow.
Really?
Facing the music. Yeah.
You know that you're right.
Got
There's this YouTuber who's in Georgia, and at one point, so he doesn't like Putin. Okay, fair enough.
What's his name?
NF something, NFKRZ something Roman.
Oh yeah, I know. He was from St. Petersburg.
Yeah, and
No
I watch his
fuckers.
videos. He's chill, but he doesn't like Putin. Okay,
Fine.
And he left to Georgia because he was scared to lose YouTube. Like that was his main income, so he left. I was like, okay, makes sense. But one thing I remember in one video, he said he's against these special military operations. But then when people on Reddit and everything were showing and praising the death of Russian soldiers, he got mad. He's like, guys, don't do it. And even it triggered him as a Russian. So no matter your political side, even the Russians outside Russia that don't like Putin, they're like, hold on, guys, stop promoting the death and laughing at people like this. You know, it could be my cousin or something.
Yeah.
But he got mad. And it's interesting to see that too, that by pushing this narrative in the West that hating Russians, a lot of people are like, hold on, hold on a second. It's all Russians that are targeted.
No, what I find deeply disturbing, to tell you the truth, is when people celebrate the killing of some soldiers of either side. I think it's really despicable because, you know, how can I put it? It's like you're losing your humanity by celebrating the death of your enemy like that. You know, it's a tragedy, you know, and maybe that makes me sound sentimental. I don't care. But it really is, it dehumanizes the person who is so celebrating the death of somebody. I don't particularly like it. I don't like, for instance, like some of the pro-Russian outlets in different platforms. They talk about plinking Ukrainian positions, right? And okay, it's funny, but it's tragic because these are young men who perhaps they don't even want to be there. You know, it's fucking tragic. I mean,
we've seen the
I don't want to
videos
sound
from
sentimental. I don't
Roundtable.
want to sound like a little, you know, a little old lady. But to tell you the truth, it just I find it deeply disturbing, and I don't like because it's tragic. I mean, some shit is funny, like what you were saying about that missile that you know missed the lawnmower altogether. It's funny, but I don't want to see the images of those poor
in
people
a tragic
those
way.
apartments. Yeah, you know,
No,
and I'm not certainly not going to celebrate it. Certainly not going to celebrate the death of anybody. And so when I see that kind of celebration of the death of other human beings, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? I mean,
the other
honestly,
thing I won't participate in is this naming of the other side as animals or anything.
Oh,
That's again the first step to psychological dehumanization. And
I see that being done a lot, and I find it disgusting. Like no matter where you stand, some people honestly, no matter where you stand in this war, they don't dehumanize because it's just dirty. It's dirty.
Well, you become as bad as your enemy because, like, if you see any like channels, mainly like Telegram, I'm thinking of right now as an example in my head, where maybe they lord over prisoners of war. Like,
oh yeah,
either side
remember
does it.
remember those videos of when they shot those Russian POWs and people were celebrating? I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Those guys were like handcuffed or tied up, and they got shot like that. That's fucking
For me, this is the turning point of the war, honestly, because the moment it was done, it was in mid-March, and until then, Ukraine was holding up, right? Had they not done that, a lot more Russians would have surrendered. But then being shot, like I'm like, who the F
Go ahead.
does
I'm
that?
demonetized, man. Don't worry.
Who does that and films it and posts it online? Like, how retarded do you have to be? Sorry
for me,
for
the people that do
but
that, they're assured that, because they were thinking, oh, I'm going to send it to all my buddies. And they know that all their buddies are of that mindset and that they'll get that social reinforcement. And I believe that's where they thought it would be, and that would where it stay. And that was common practice for them to do. Hey, we've bad shit talked these Russians for so long. Here, I've got one and I've done this to him. Ha ha ha, isn't it great? Share it with all your mates on Telegram. And then it spilt over. And then it was another unintended victory for Russia on the PR front.
And that's for me, this is when the tide started turning, because then there was this battle of Mariupol taking place at the same time. But this is when people on the Russian side, I already talked about it, but imagine the Russian soldiers, they don't have cell phones, right? And imagine their officer comes by and he says, okay, look at this video. We know you don't like the war. We know that you don't want to fight. But if you surrender, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And this makes you more determined. You're like, okay.
Yeah, because the fact is that the Zelensky regime does not have the POWs to exchange for all the POWs that the Russians have. I hear that current estimates are that the Russians have between 6,000 and 8,000 Zelensky regime force POWs, but the Ukrainians don't have that number, and the question becomes: did they shoot them all? Because in any kind of big industrial warfare like this, it's inevitable that pockets get caught, and you have POWs from both sides. Doesn't mean anything insofar as the overall direction of the conflict is concerned. It's just a natural part of the warfare. And the Zelensky regime doesn't have those POWs. Did they shoot them all? Will that ever come out? Will that ever be known? Because look, we're talking about those mid-March killings of POWs, of Russian POWs. That's what we saw.
That's what we saw.
Yeah.
What about the mutilations? Because I saw in the Western press about this 110 deal that just happened the other day, where Russia gave back a load of women.
Yeah, except two who stayed.
Oh yeah. Two of the DPR said they wanted to go to Russia. Yeah, they refused to go. Now my point there, the West were like, and none of the Russian prisoners complained of mistreatment. I was like, that means zilch. So you handed back the guys you didn't mutilate. So where are the guys that even your own medical officer on TV? So who are you lying to? Are you lying to Ukrainians that you're chopping the balls off Russian prisoners, or are you lying to Russia that you're doing? Yeah, what I mean.
Remember that doctor who said that he deliberately castrated Russian POWs. I have no idea if that's true or not, but just to say it is just so galactically stupid.
Off the records, as I understand, there have been prisoners exchanged who had that happen to them, and they're swept under the rug because it doesn't serve Russia to have that publicized.
Jesus,
you know what I mean?
That it doesn't serve them.
True.
In what context? Why wouldn't it serve them?
Because they look weak.
The damage is worse than the benefit, I guess.
So because they look weak. Think about it. If you know that your soldiers get treated like that and you do nothing.
First of all, they surrendered, and then they were mutilated in various ways, and Russia failed to protect them. And then, you could have all sorts of knock-on things. Then it would stop the mobilization participation rates, maybe. You think about the negative PR that it could be.
I think what will happen is that
if true, I'll stress, if true,
the Russian soldiers know this, so they're not going to really be taking any POWs. See, I mean, the fact that the Russians released some of those Azov fighters, and I know that everybody sort of like demonizes the Azov battalion because it's just an easy brushstroke for everybody who's an extremist. But those who got released to Turkey and they immediately went back to Ukraine, I think that probably I would not be surprised that a lot of Russians at the front they say to themselves, hey, if we find a POW with any tattoo that we don't like, we'll just shoot him on the spot and say that, oh, combat, sorry. I mean, yeah.
I think Wagner could get away with it.
Oh, yeah.
They've got loose things. And to be fair, they haven't stopped doing it, by the way. Kupiansk, they just did it to civilians and tried to pin it on Russia.
What
those teachers rolled them in a pit. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I can't believe when I saw that video, man. Jesus.
Yeah, just the other day. And then they tried to Photoshop a red band on his trousers. I loved how the Russians then superimposed Zelensky standing over it. Like, oh, two could play that game.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we've been going on for 2.25 hours now, which has been a hell of a lot of fun. And so we're going to wind down the stream. Mike, Alex, why don't you stick around a little bit just to say a few words before going on your way? Chat, give me a +1 if you enjoyed the show and a 0 if you didn't, because I, for one, certainly had a hell of a lot of fun.
Wait. Let me put my hat on, then we'll get lots of +1s.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, thanks, chat. Oh, there we go, man. Yeah, everybody seems to have enjoyed the show. We peaked out at about 4,800 concurrent viewers, which is pretty good.
Was that the Viagra joke?
No. It was about a half hour ago. We peaked out at 4,800, and so yeah, this video is going to get like, I don't know, 80 to 100,000, something like that. Chat, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the show. Mike, where can we find you?
Over on iEarlGrey. I think the handle is at iEarlGrey TV because some other bugger took Earl Grey. So at iEarlGrey TV. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Like, my account's still up, but because they did that stupid thing where I have to use a phone, but my phone's Russian, so they don't let me go on there. So I'm not on there anymore. So main thing is YouTube or iEarlGrey.locals.com.
Okay. The link is in the description below. Alex, where can people find you?
On HistoryLegends on YouTube, or if you want to chat with me, HistoryLegends2 on Instagram.
Okay. The link to the YouTube channel is below, and I assume that at your YouTube channel you have the Instagram link.
I have all the links there, yeah.
Okay, great. So, guys, like I said, Alex, Mike, stick around a little bit. Chat, I hope you enjoyed the show. I certainly did. And yeah, take it easy, and we will catch you soon.